I was in line at a gas station in Wyoming when I saw the photo. It wasn't in a message or in a frame. It was on the front of a tabloid magazine right next to beef jerky and breath mints. The headline read, "Ex-socialite and lover of billionaire vanishes after 15-year scandal." And there she was, a Claire Kessler. My wife. Or rather, the woman who used to be. I picked up the magazine like I was holding evidence from a crime scene. There she stood in the blurry image, tan skin, windblown hair, holding a martini glass on a yacht deck. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, wearing sunglasses and a wedding ring. That part hadn't changed. She always had a type married. The cashier looked at me like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. I hadn't spoken her name in 15 years. Not after what she did. Not after she walked out of our marriage, our apartment, and our lives without even bothering to tell me face to face. Back then, I was working late hours in a city I hated to give us a future she never planned on keeping. She said she needed space to breathe. She didn't tell me that her oxygen came in the form of someone else's husband. It's strange how betrayal doesn't arrive with fire and screaming. Sometimes it's a cup of tea left unfinished. A dress that disappears from the closet. An extra toothbrush gone from the holder. When I came home that night 15 years ago, the apartment was clean. Too clean. Like she had scrubbed away not just her presence, but her guilt. No letter. No calls. Just 2 months later, someone forwarded me an online article about a philanthropist caught in scandalous affair during a charity retreat in Fiji. Claire. With a married venture capitalist named Emeryvale. 3 kids. 1 lawsuit. A media circus. The whole 9 yards. And now, out of nowhere, her face appears again. As if the universe wanted me to remember the taste of humiliation I worked so hard to forget. Later that night, when I got back to my motel room, the lights on my phone were blinking. Voicemail. Unknown number. I hit play. Jules, it's Claire. I don't know if you'll even hear this. But if you do. I'm in Cedar Ridge for a few days. I'm staying at the Windmere Inn. I think I owe you everything I never said. If you want, come see me. Room 214. She hung up before I could breathe. I hadn't gone by Jules Kessler in over a decade. Everyone here just called me Mr. K. But somehow that voice reached through 15 years like no time had passed at all. And I hated that a part of me wanted to walk through the door she just reopened. I didn't sleep that night. The motel sheets felt like paper, the air stale with the smell of someone else's cheap cologne. I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, phone in my hand, her voice still lingering in my ears like a song I didn't ask to remember. I told myself I wouldn't go. I told myself I was stronger now. That I'd moved on, built a new life. That I didn't need closure from a woman who once traded our marriage for a weekend in someone else's bed. But by morning, my truck was already pointed towards Cedar Ridge. The Windmere Inn sat at the edge of the forest like it didn't want to be found. Old-fashioned, quiet, too clean for a place that still used brass keys instead of cards. I stepped inside expecting to be hit with regret or fury or something else I could prepare for, but instead I felt nothing. Numbness is a defense too, I suppose. The receptionist, a young guy with a crooked name tag that read Dustin, barely looked up when I asked about room 214. She checked in alone. Quiet. Paid in cash, he said, tapping the desk. Said she was expecting someone. You. I didn't answer. I climbed the stairs slow, deliberately, each creak of the old wood sounding like a warning. Outside her door, I raised my hand to knock and paused. What was I expecting to find? A woman full of apologies? A sob story? Or worse, a smile that assumed I'd forgotten. When I knocked, the door didn't open right away. Then it did. And there she was. Claire. Her hair was shorter now, darker. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, no perfume I could detect. She looked older, not just in age, but in wear. She wasn't the polished storm I remembered. She was quiet. Almost small. For a long second, we just stood there. Then she spoke. I didn't think you'd come. You didn't think a lot of things, I replied. She stepped aside and gestured to the chair by the window. Will you sit? I did. Not because I wanted to make her comfortable, but because I wanted control. I wanted to hear it all, watch her unravel piece by piece. She didn't start with excuses. That surprised me. Instead, she said, he left me. The man I gave everything up for. The money, the yachts, the promises, it was all a lie. And I was too blind, too arrogant to see it. I didn't flinch. I thought I mattered to him, she said, staring out the window. But I was just leverage in his divorce. A pawn. Once his wife cut him loose, so did he. Moved on with someone 10 years younger. Someone with a clean name. She turned to face me. I wasn't reaching out to be forgiven. I don't deserve that. I was reaching out because I think I need to say everything I never said. For my sake. And maybe yours. I looked at her for a long time. And then, without raising my voice or moving an inch, I asked, "Do you even remember what you took from me?" That stopped her. She blinked. Once. Twice. Her hands trembled. "You didn't just break a marriage," I said, my voice steady. "You assassinated a version of me I'll never get back. You let me become a stranger in my own home, in my own skin. And you never even said goodbye." "I know," she whispered. "That's what eats at me. Every day." There was a silence between us, heavy but fragile, like a bridge that couldn't hold weight anymore. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for 15 years. "Why him?" Her answer wasn't what I expected. She said, "Because he made me feel powerful. Because I was tired of feeling small in a world where you were everything stable, and I was just waiting to be more. I thought he could turn me into someone people noticed." She paused, tears in her eyes now. "But I traded substance for spotlight, and the spotlight didn't last." I didn't pity her, but for the first time in years, I finally understood something. Her betrayal wasn't just about desire, it was about insecurity, identity, illusion. And now she sat across from me, a hollow version of the woman who once burned my life down, asking me to witness her ruins. I stood up. She tensed. But I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just said, "I didn't come here for revenge. I came to see if the ghost in my memory still had a face." And as I left the room, I realized she did. But it wasn't the face I used to love. I didn't plan to see her again. After leaving that hotel room, I drove back into town thinking that was the end of it, that the dead had spoken, and now I could finally bury them. But Claire had other plans. The next morning, an envelope showed up at the front desk of my motel. No name, just room 12 in red ink. Same handwriting as the note on my front door. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a single line. "Please meet me for 1 hour. Coffee only. No stories. Just one thing I need to give you." Underneath, there was an address. Ash and Birch Cafe, 10:30 a.m. I told myself no. Then I told myself it wouldn't matter. Then I found myself standing outside Ash and Birch at 10:29, pretending to scroll my phone, pretending I didn't care. She was already inside, sitting at a corner table, not dressed up, not done up, just plain, normal, like she'd run out of masks. When she saw me, she didn't smile, just nodded slightly, like she knew I'd come. Not from hope, but from curiosity. I sat down without a word. She didn't waste time either. She reached into her bag and slid a thick envelope across the table. I didn't touch it. "What is this?" I asked. She hesitated. "Answers. Not all of them. Just the ones you were never allowed to have." I raised an eyebrow. "And why now?" She folded her hands, almost like in prayer. "Because I kept something from you. Something that I thought would ruin your life more than I already had. But it turns out, keeping it made it worse." Still not touching the envelope, I said, "If this is a letter, you could have mailed it." Her eyes darkened. "It's not a letter. It's a timeline. Documents. Photos. Statements. From the investigation." I leaned back. "What investigation?" Claire didn't speak right away. She looked around, made sure no one was watching, then said very quietly, "Nathan wasn't just a con man. He was being watched. Federal level. He had shell companies, fake charities, offshore laundering through the same retreats we went on. I was questioned more times than I can count. And I lied to them. And to you." I stared at her for a long time. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that while you were cheating on me, you were also aiding a federal criminal?" She swallowed hard. "Yes, without knowing it at first. Then yes, knowingly." And I kept quiet. The air around us changed. For a moment, I couldn't hear the clinking of mugs or the soft jazz playing from the speakers. I was back in our old apartment, looking at the empty closet. Only now, I understood why she had vanished so thoroughly, why she'd paid in cash, why her name had disappeared from every traceable platform. "What's in the envelope?" I finally asked. "Everything they couldn't use," she said. And everything I wasn't brave enough to share with you, including him. I didn't want to ask, but I did. Him who? She looked down, and when she looked back up, I saw a kind of fear I had never seen in her before. Not the fear of being caught, the fear of being believed. There was another man, she whispered, after Nathan, but he wasn't rich. He wasn't married. He was dangerous. I sat completely still. Claire, what are you saying? She took a breath like it hurt to inhale. I disappeared, Jules. Not because I chose freedom, but because I was being hunted. And with that, she stood up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out, leaving me alone with a sealed envelope that suddenly felt radioactive in my hands. I sat there for almost 20 minutes, staring at the envelope like it might explode. Claire was gone. She'd left just like 15 years ago, but this time she didn't vanish into luxury and scandal. This time she left behind a ticking truth I wasn't sure I wanted to open. And I could have walked away. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Back in my motel room, I placed the envelope on the table like a loaded weapon. My hands hesitated. Not out of fear of what I'd find, but fear of what it might unlock in me. I'd spent years building distance, carefully arranging a life where she was a footnote, not a wound. But this felt like a scalpel. I opened it. Inside were over 20 documents. Not photocopies, originals. Some were statements from bank accounts in the Bahamas. Others were screenshots of emails between Claire and a man named Anthony Rives. I didn't recognize the name at first. But then one of the printouts caught my eye, an internal memo from the Department of Justice dated 2009, referencing AR as a person of interest in an arms trafficking investigation. Not fraud. Not laundering. Weapons. There were photos too. Claire, in a parking garage, handing off a folder to a man in a dark jacket. The angle was grainy, surveillance style. Another showed her getting into a black SUV with no plates. The timestamps matched the months she was off the grid. And then came the letter. Not handwritten. Typed. To Jules Kessler. If you're reading this, then I've broken the last promise I made to myself, staying away from you. I didn't just leave to chase a man. I left because I became a liability. Nathan was the doorway. Anthony was the threat. He used me. Not romantically, strategically. I was the clean name. The pretty face. The one who could open doors at embassy events. When I tried to walk away, things got dark. The letter described hotels with double exits, untraceable cash transfers, and a night in Caracas where she claimed to have witnessed something she never recovered from. She never described it, just called it the moment I stopped sleeping. You need to understand something, she wrote. Nathan's betrayal didn't break me. Anthony's game did. I wanted to reach out sooner. I didn't because I knew if I did, you might get pulled in. And I wouldn't survive knowing that. But now I'm not sure I'll survive anyway. That last line sat heavy in my gut. I reread the documents. 3 of them had redacted sections with black ink, but one hadn't been censored. It was a background summary of Anthony Rives. Ex-CIA disavowed. Suspected of selling intel to multiple foreign buyers. Last seen in Marrakesh. A line at the bottom chilled me. Do not approach. Consider armed and unpredictable. So this is what my ex-wife had been running from. And now she was back. In my town. Sitting in cafes. Staying in a hotel where anyone could find her. I suddenly felt cold. Because if Claire was telling the truth, then someone else knew she was back. And if someone else knew, what if she hadn't come back to make peace? What if she'd come back to hide? I looked again at the hotel receipt she'd included. Windmere Inn. For nights prepaid. She had only used 2. And I had a terrible feeling she wouldn't use the last. By the time the sun dropped below the trees, I was already back in the parking lot of the Windmere Inn. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to care. But the envelope hadn't just unsettled me, it reprogrammed the entire story I thought I knew. Claire hadn't run away because she was selfish. She ran because she was scared. And maybe she still was. I approached the front desk with a calm I didn't feel. The kid behind the counter was the same one from earlier, Dustin. He looked up from his phone like I was interrupting a nap. She's still in 214? I asked. He frowned. 214's been cleaned out. My stomach dropped. When? I asked, trying to sound casual. This morning. She checked out around 7. Left no note. Just dropped the key and walked. Didn't even want the last 2 nights refunded. Weird, right? Did she say where she was going? He shook his head. Didn't say a word. I asked if I could get into the room, said I thought she left something of mine. He hesitated, then slid me the key like he didn't want to argue. 15 minutes, he said. When I stepped inside, I didn't know what I was expecting. But it wasn't this. The room was pristine. Not a towel out of place. The bed was remade, the coffee pot wiped, no trash in the bin. But that was what made it wrong. Too clean. Sanitized. I checked drawers under the bed, even the ceiling tiles, nothing. Except, in the corner of the closet, tucked behind the ironing board, I found something folded in plastic. A dry cleaning bag. Inside was a black trench coat. Not hers. Too big. Too formal. It smelled like cologne, like ash and spice. The tag inside said AR. Anthony Rives. I stepped back. Why would she leave his coat behind? Unless. I turned the coat inside out and felt something taped under the lining. My fingers trembled as I peeled it loose. It was a flash drive. No label. No markings. I left immediately. Back in my motel room, I connected the drive to my old laptop, a junker I barely used except for property surveys. When the screen loaded, there was one folder. Titled, The Backup. Inside, over 50 video files. Surveillance footage. Voice recordings. Spreadsheets labeled with foreign bank names. One video was marked, Brussels. 2011, Rives plus contact. Another, black site transcript. Intercepted call. Female voice suspected, CK. Claire. She'd been recording him. For years, it seemed. And now it was all in my hands. I didn't understand everything I was looking at, not yet. But I knew this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about evidence. About a federal target who might still be hunting anyone who held proof of what he did. And Claire? If she'd left this with me, maybe she knew she wouldn't be around long enough to use it herself. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I made copies of the drive, then backed them up onto cloud storage under encrypted names. Just in case. And as I sat staring at the flickering motel TV, I got a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. Claire. Sitting in the back seat of a black car. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Like she'd just seen a ghost. Or worse, someone she thought was dead. The photo was taken from inside the car. That much I could tell immediately. Blurry, fast, probably from the front passenger seat. Claire's face was turned to her right and her eyes weren't scared. They were locked. Frozen. Focused on someone just out of frame. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. She hadn't sent the photo. Someone else had. And they wanted me to see her just before. What? There was no follow-up message. No threat. No demand. Just the image, timestamped 6 minutes before I received it. I tried calling the number. Disconnected. I tried texting. Blocked. And then I realized something worse than panic. No one even knew she had reached out to me. Not the police. Not her family. Not the feds, if they were even still watching Rives. Just me. And whoever was in that car with her. I knew I had maybe one chance to get ahead of whatever was unfolding. So I drove. Fast. Not toward the windmere, that door was closed, but toward the last lead I hadn't chased yet, her old emergency contact. Before Claire disappeared all those years ago, she had one person she always turned to when she was in over her head, her older sister, Bernice. They hadn't spoken since Claire got involved with Nathan, but if anyone knew the weight of Claire's silence, it was Bernice. She lived 2 hours outside of town, in a quiet stretch of backcountry that didn't get visitors. I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce. Didn't expect a warm welcome. But she opened the door the moment she saw me through the glass. No hesitation. Just a hard stare. You saw her, didn't you? She said. I nodded. I knew it, she whispered, stepping aside. She called me once. 10 days ago. Said she had to disappear again, but first, she needed to tell someone the truth. I told her not to do it. Told her you were better off. She left me a flash drive, I said. It has files. A lot of them. Some about Nathan. Most about someone named Anthony Rives. Bernice didn't blink. That man? She was terrified of him. She told me he wasn't romantic. That he used her. She was lying, Bernice said flatly. He was both. He broke her in ways Nathan never could. And he never let her go, Jules. She tried to run. But there were always eyes on her. Even when she was off the grid. He had contacts in places you wouldn't believe. That's when Bernice handed me something I didn't expect, a burner phone. She sent this to me 2 days ago. Told me to keep it off until I heard from her again. I turned it on this morning after seeing her name trending again online. And right before you arrived, it got a ping. She handed it to me. The screen lit up with a location pin not far from the Nevada border. A town I'd never heard of, Lee Mark. She was going there to meet someone, Bernice said. She didn't say who. Just that it was someone from the early days. The early days of what? Of the operation, Bernice said. Whatever she was dragged into or willingly joined started long before you ever knew she was gone. I was already walking toward the door when Bernice called after me. Jules? I turned. If you find her, don't forgive her because she asked. Only do it if you truly want to. She's still Claire, but I don't know what parts of her are hers anymore. And what parts belong to what she's trying to run from. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. It was already dark when I hit Lee Mark. A forgotten town made of rust, dust, and blinking neon. Gas stations without attendants. Motels that looked abandoned even when they were open. And down the street, tucked between a pawn shop and a liquor store, was the only place still glowing. The side pocket bar. The GPS ping from the burner phone placed Claire within 300 feet of it. That was enough for me. I parked, walked in, and let my eyes adjust to the yellow light. 3 men at the bar. A woman playing pool alone. The bartender wiping down a glass like he had all night. Then I saw it. On the far-end booth, the one in the corner with the torn leather, was her purse. No Claire. Just the purse. And on top of it, a burner phone identical to the one I was holding. It buzzed in my hand. New message, you're already too late. The message hit harder than it should have. You're already too late. I stared at the screen, half expecting another line to follow. A location. A demand. A threat. But nothing came. Just silence. I looked up at the bar again. The purse. The second burner phone. Still no Claire. I moved toward the booth slowly, scanning every face in the room. The woman with the pool cue glanced up briefly. The bartender met my eyes longer than I liked. The men at the bar didn't turn at all. That alone made me suspicious. I sat down at the booth and reached for the purse. It was hers. I remembered the stitching on the strap. But what caught my attention was what was inside. A hotel room key, not Windmere, not even Cedar Ridge. This one was branded with the logo of a roadside lodge 2 towns over, the Silver Rest. Room 3C. And tucked behind it? A folded piece of paper with 5 words. If I don't show, run. I didn't wait. I stood, walked straight out of the bar, and drove. The silence in my truck felt unbearable. Like the air itself was waiting to collapse. My hands shook on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the weight of 15 years finally moving faster than I could think. The Silver Rest sat at the edge of nowhere. 3 stories high, 1 security light flickering near the entrance. No front desk clerk in sight. I parked in back and took the stairs 2 at a time. Room 3C was at the far end, and when I reached it I froze. The door was ajar. Only by a crack. I didn't knock. I pushed it open slowly. Claire was inside. But she wasn't standing. She wasn't speaking. She was slumped in the armchair, eyes open but vacant, wrists zip-tied together in front of her like she tried to defend herself and failed. Alive barely. I moved fast, checking her pulse. It was weak but steady. She was drugged, not dying. There was a sharp sting of relief in my throat, but it didn't last. Because taped to the mirror above the desk was a note written in a hand I didn't recognize. You kept the files. That was your first mistake. My body went cold. Whoever did this hadn't just come for Claire. They came for what she gave me. And they weren't done. Then I saw the next note folded and left on the nightstand. It simply read, "Check your truck." I ran. The parking lot was dark, empty except for my vehicle. I unlocked the door remotely, my eyes darting around for movement. But what I found wasn't outside the truck. It was inside the glove box. A phone, not mine. Prepaid. Battery at 100%. No lock screen. And it was already recording. The moment I picked it up, the screen flickered, then played a video. It showed me. From earlier. Sitting in the Windmere in lobby. Looking up at the front desk. Talking to Dustin. Then the camera panned and there he was. Anthony Rives. Very much alive. Very much watching me. He was standing by the vending machine. Pretending to buy a soda. Just enough in frame to be seen. Just enough to let me know he'd been steps behind me the entire time. The footage ended. No voiceover. No message. Just that image burned into my eyes. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about control. And I was now inside the very game Claire had once begged me to avoid. The only question was, how much time did I have left? I didn't go back inside the motel room right away. I stood by my truck for a long time, staring at the phone, knowing that somewhere out there, Anthony Rives was watching. Or at least, he wanted me to believe he was. But something had changed. He had slipped. He'd shown himself. And people like him don't do that unless they're scared or they're running out of time. So I made a decision. Not to run. Not to disappear like Claire once had. But to finish what she started. I took the flash drive, the phone, and every document she'd handed over, and I walked into the county sheriff's office at 4:17 in the morning. I asked to speak with someone from the DOJ, not the locals. I told them it was a matter of national security. When they gave me that look that this guy's crazy one, I pulled out the photo of Rives. The one from the surveillance. The one that had his face clear as day. An hour later, 2 federal agents were on a video call with me in a closed room. I told them everything. Claire's story. The recordings. The drive. The footage from my glove box. And most importantly, the part that had always been missing, the motive. Anthony wasn't just running a black market operation. He was running people like Claire as unwitting assets. Using them to pass information, launder funds, build fake identities. She was the perfect ghost. Pretty, connected, and disposable. They took everything. Copied it. Asked me 100 questions. I didn't care. I gave them what they needed. And then I went back to Claire. She was awake by the time I returned. Her eyes were clearer, though rimmed with exhaustion and shame. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me with the weight of someone expecting to be abandoned again. I told them everything, I said quietly. It's over, Claire. You don't have to hide anymore. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. Why did you come back for me? She asked. I took a breath. Because you didn't lie this time. And because someone had to see you through it. Might as well be someone who still remembers who you were before all this. She closed her eyes. For the first time since we reunited, I saw her breathe like it didn't hurt. 2 months later, we sat together at a diner in Oregon, far from the places where our pasts used to live. The DOJ had issued her limited protection. The case against Rives was building. Slowly, quietly, but with momentum now, real consequences on the horizon. She wasn't in hiding anymore. She was in transition. And so was I. We didn't call it love again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was something between us neither of us could name, only respect and pain and survival. And a strange kind of peace. Over eggs and coffee, Claire looked up at me and said something I hadn't expected. I think this is the first time in my life I don't feel owned by anyone. I nodded. You're not. She smiled. Just a small one. The kind that doesn't need to be big to be real. And in that moment I knew this, we might never be who we were. But for the first time in 15 years, the ghosts were quiet. And that was enough.